Thank you. All right, second round of applause for you.
Wow,
That's
nice.
something. We don't usually get that.
Good groove.
It must be.
Thank you.
I thought it was for me. Thank you for being here.
Thank
You
you
don't,
for
you don't
having
do
me.
a lot of these, so I appreciate it. To get started, I want to talk a little bit about you before we talk about SAP itself.
Okay.
When you were 16, you bought your own deli
Right,
to put yourself through school.
right.
So you started out as a real entrepreneur, kind of self-starter. But then you went to work in these giant enterprise companies.
Right.
Why?
Well, I was broke as a kid, so I needed the money. I traded in 3 part-time jobs, so I was actually simplifying my life to buy a corner store. And that's why with Winner's Dream, the tagline is from the corner store to the corner office. And the big idea, you know, from being a teenage entrepreneur was really having an ultimate respect, professional courtesy, appreciation for customers.
Sure.
Because I learned early on, you can get anything in this life you want as long as you help enough other people get what they want. And, you know, to underscore this, you know, as a teenage entrepreneur, just think about this. You're 16 years old, you got this store, and you got giants on either side of you. One is like a big corporate supermarket, the other one is a big corporate convenience store called 7-Eleven. And then there's me. And I bought the business for $7,000 in notes, which means I was broke, but the person who wanted to sell it wanted to get out so bad, he's like, let's give the kid a chance, because if I don't make my payments, they just take the store back anyway.
Did you make your payment?
I made my payments because I had the vendors give me the first delivery on consignment. I told them I'll never shop you. I'll always be loyal. You probably charge me too much, but I'll always owe you the first shipment when I sell this business. I never want anything for free. And what I learned quickly is you have to expand the perimeter of what these businesses do. So at that time, some of you may recognize Asteroids and Pac-Man. I went to the mall one day and I see these big machines called Asteroids and Pac-Man, and I see these kids plucking quarters in it. And I'm like, that's an idea. Why don't I build a video game room? So on the back of the video machine, it's like Tony's video games. I call up Tony. I said, hey, Tony, how much for the video game? He said, $5,000. I said, I don't have $5,000. Okay, $4,500. I don't have $4,500 either. But I tell you what, you put the video games in the store, and we'll split the quarters. And if you don't make any money, you just take them back.
Fair enough.
Long story short, I had to get these high school kids to walk a block and a half past 7-Eleven to my store. So how do you do that? I go down there one day. The kids are in line 40 at a time. There's only 4 inside the store. I said, why are you all waiting out here with this big store in there? They said, well, they think we're going to take things. I said, don't worry about that. Come down to my store.
Did they take your stuff?
I let them in 40 at a time. No one ever took anything. They played video games and so on. One young person said to me at the end of a long day, Bill, when we want to have good food, be treated with respect, and play video games, we come to your store. And when we want to steal stuff, we go to 7-Eleven. So, you know, if you treat people well, it may come back to you.
How did 7-Eleven feel about that?
Well, 7-Eleven, they didn't feel good because now all the kids boycotted the store and just came to my store instead. So it became like a little bit of a social movement. And it was really beautiful. I really will never forget those early lessons. You know, you have to know your customer and you have to really think about what you're good at. For example, it was a blue-collar neighborhood, so there was a lot of folks like my dad who were blue-collar workers, and they were flush rich on Friday night when they got paid, but they were broke by Sunday morning,
Sure.
so we gave them credit. And, you know, there was a senior citizen complex, and the seniors, we learned, didn't want to leave their house, so we delivered. So we found things to expand the perimeter of what our little business did that the competition either couldn't do because they're structurally unable to, or they're unwilling to do because they're lazy. And you put that all together, and that little store did okay.
Sure. Now, when I think of giant enterprise companies, though, including maybe SAP to some
Yeah.
degree, I don't always think of them as companies that focus all that much on like getting love from their customers. What?
I mean, maybe the best way to describe, love for the customer is, in the early experiences, because I went from being that teenager entrepreneur into a large company at 21.
Yep.
And it was very interesting. I'll never forget the first day, trying to get a job in a large enterprise. And, I was coming from Amityville, Long Island, and I lived in a house, you have Hurricane Dorian running around the US right now that flooded every time there was a major northeast storm. And I had my $99 suit on, and I'm basically trying to get to the car to go to the railroad tracks to get an interview. My brother picks me up. I'm on the 5th step from the bottom. That's how much water was in my house. Puts me on his shoulder, carries me to the street, pours me into the car. My dad drops me off at the railroad tracks. We ride into Manhattan. And I'm reading this annual report from the then CEO of Xerox. And Xerox was Google then. It was Facebook. It was the company. And this CEO wants to reinvent the company on something called total quality management. And their issue was, they were building a product for a higher price point than the competition was selling a higher quality product. That's not a good business model, guys. So, look, I don't care. I'm 21. I'm zooming in on the train. I get to the hiring center, top of the 6s in Manhattan. I'm like, this is my day, right? It's a big chance. And I look around, and I remember the line before I left for New York City. Sitting next to my dad in the car. I love my dad. I said, Dad, I guarantee I'm coming home tonight with my employee badge in my pocket. My dad said, Bill, don't put all that pressure on yourself, man. You're a good guy. Just do your best.
What gave you that confidence?
I had to get the job. And when you have to do something, I always found the best way to do it is put yourself in a position where you visualize it happening and you believe it. And when you believe it, you often can achieve it. So I get there, and I'm looking around this room, and there's like these folks from Princeton, New Jersey, Greenwich, Connecticut, went to the best schools on earth. And I'm in there with my $99 suit from Long Island, having run a little business, and I'm saying to myself, I might have overshot it a little bit with my dad here, But I look around, beautiful women and men like yourselves, and I'm like trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Like, do you panic because they're so good, or do you just play to your strengths? And I talk to 500 people a day in the deli, so I was just like, hey, what are you in for? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your goal? And they would say things like, I'm playing the field. I'm interviewing at Goldman and Morgan and IBM and so on. And you know what happened then? I got my superpower. You know why? Because I realized I wanted it so much more than they wanted it. And I go through like major interviews that day. I think it was on the 9th one I get invited to 9 West 57th. And the CEO basically is waiting for me in his office. I think that they forgot about me and another candidate was sitting on a bench, And I stand up, Joanne Siciliano is the assistant, and I say, I just want, Mr. Fullwood to know I'm here. And I'll stay all night. I just want him to be aware of that. I get invited into his office, great office. Central Park, 38th floor. I look over his shoulder as I'm going into the hearth of that doorway, and I realized I wasn't in for an interview. I was in for the fight of my life. Because if I get the job, I change the trajectory of my life. We have a great meeting, and at the end he says to me, Bill, this is very interesting. Really enjoyed meeting you. You're a very passionate young man. And then you know what he said? The HR department will be in touch. You ever hear that one before? And I said, Mr. Fullwood, I don't think you completely understand the situation, sir. And he looks at me like head tilted, what's this kid up to? And I said, I never broke a promise to my dad in 21 years. And I guaranteed him I'd have my employee badge in my pocket tonight. Now he's really tilting. And he said, Bill McDermott, as long as you haven't committed any crimes, you're hired. I said, I certainly haven't committed any crimes, so you sure? And he goes, yes. So I walk around the table.
But those people at 7-Eleven, you put them on.
I walk around the table, and I kind of bear hug him a little bit, place him safely back in his chair.
That's how you...
I shoot past the receptionist. I go down 38 floors. I'm now on 5th Avenue. I run to 6th Avenue. And then you had to put quarters in phones. Very interesting time. It seems like a million years ago, right? Call up my mom and dad. And I said, Mom and Dad, break out the Corbel. We got the job. And for those of you that don't know, Corbel is like the worst champagne in the world. But it is Long Island Cristal.
What would you have done if you hadn't gotten that job? Would you have gone back to the deli and done that?
It's a great question. You know, a lot of people say, would you have opened up a chain? Would you have done things like that? I never wanted to anything other than lead. And my enjoyment in leadership is running organizations with lots of people and doing very, very exciting things. I believe strongly in the power of innovation. I love the software industry more than anything in the world. I'm doing my dream job. So I wanted to be in a big company. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur opening up a chain of delis. I admire people that do that. It's just that wasn't my, goal.
Let's jump forward a little bit.
Sure.
By 2014, you were CEO of SAP. Mm-hmm. How did that come about? Because you spent some time as a co-CEO, and this is a German company that never had an outside.
Right.
The founders ran the company.
Right.
Why did they trust you with that job?
It's a really important question. Trust is the ultimate human currency. And that's what I said in my book, Winner's Dream. It really is. In the end, the ultimate human currency between humans is trust. I came in 2002 into the Americas as the CEO of SAP America. SAP America had missed 24 quarters in a row.
Why?
I beg your pardon?
Why? Why did they?
The company globally had a very good brand and a wonderful product. But in America, they had like 5 CEOs in 6 years. There was a lot of turnover. In the Valley, there was tremendous innovation going on. And many of the best people just lost confidence in the American operation and left. So what you had left over was mediocrity. But the biggest issue was they lost the view of where the customer needed to go. And everything became about the product. And if you have a product looking for a problem, there's a real issue with the way you're running the business. What I try to do is build a great management team, people that had an orientation around audacious goals and a love for people and a desire to do amazing things for the customer. And the only way to pull that off is to have an outside-in view of the world. And at that time, we moved from a product-centric organization to a solutions and value delivery organization. It didn't matter if it wasn't solving a big problem for the customer and their customer. And it didn't matter if you couldn't quantify the value it delivered to the executives trying to run companies. So that change led to 70% growth. We went from number 3 in the enterprise application software industry to number 1. And we pulled that off in about 15 months. And the organization kind of went on a growth tear that led to the worldwide field job and then ultimately the CEO job in 2010 and subsequently the sole CEO job in 2014. But here's the idea. Here's the big idea. You'll all remember the financial crisis of 2008, right? Or at least if you didn't live it, you read about it. 2009 was like a slow recovery, and then 2010, I come in as CEO, and at that time, analyze the situation very carefully. So we were the number 1 company in business software, also in analytics. But as you know, the market was going to evolve very quickly, and this idea of digital transformation was at its early stage, but it was coming like a tsunami. So we knew big data. That's why we invented HANA. We knew that the ERP would have to be based upon an in-memory database that handled structured transactional data and had analytics on the same platform for unstructured data. And we knew that elastic cloud computing was absolutely the future, which is why we built a strategy around the line of business cloud and the business network, because the network of the network effect is what's driving massive value, trillions in value in the global economy. And at that time, we conceived this strategy over a 2-week period and then began to execute it and have been doing that now for, believe it or not, 10 years, Frederick.
Still the same strategy
It
you came up
evolved.
with?
It has evolved, but it is basically on the same parameters that we composed then. But here's for all the entrepreneurs out there. We had 110 billion addressable market in 2010, and that's a great market. But if you spend your time enjoying today and focusing on what you used to be, you're likely to miss tomorrow, and you're likely not to focus on what you should be. And by doing that, we increased the TAM from 110 to now 400 billion. And that's not counting the business network, where we have over $1 trillion US traveling through that network. So the idea, from my perspective, is do what you're great at, stay to your core, but look for ways to expand the perimeter in the interest of solving big problems for the customer so they can better serve their customer, which brings us to the next phase of the strategy, which we're on now.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about expanding the perimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just spent really big money on Qualtrics.
Yeah.
Well, over $8 billion. That's serious money for,
Right.
for a company that wasn't actually making that much revenue at the time. Why do that? What does it give SAP?
You know, one of the main things in the business of leadership is judgment. As we went on a bit of a shopping spree for line of business cloud and business network cloud.
Why did you go on that shopping spree?
Because our customers needed us to. If you look at our business, in 2010, we had 0 cloud revenue. In 2023, we're talking about a 15 billion cloud business. 2024 could easily be 20 and well beyond in the cloud. So had we not made those decisions then, strategically, you would say to yourself, man, what would have happened? Because today, 80% of our revenues come from businesses we weren't in 5 years ago. Things have changed, and they're changing really, really quickly. I tell people all the time, change is like unbelievably fast. We all feel it. But remember, folks, the world will never move this slow again. So that's the key. In terms of Qualtrics, here's the idea. If you think about the economy we're in now, we're in the experience economy. The idea of creating great experiences for people, this isn't just about software and technology. This is about the human experience. Whether you're serving employees in your company, making their life simple and better, or you're solving problems for your customer and their customer. It has to be simple, and the experience has to be beautiful.
Is that true for all SAP products today?
Well, let's take it one step at a time. Of course not. But let's
Good,
take it
because
one
I've got
step-
some examples for you.
Of course not. But let's take it one step at a time. So with Qualtrics, the idea was SAP has immense amounts of operational data. We run the biggest businesses in the world with 450,000 customers running SAP. We know what's going on. I call that O data, or operational data. What everyone needs to get in touch with is X data, or the experience data, the things that really matter to the customer. When you can combine your X's and your O's, and you can do that on the SAP platform, you can fundamentally change the world. So that was the idea of Qualtrics, and that idea is fundamentally changing experiences for people. I hope you agree with the strategy, and already the signs are transformational. So if you think about the idea of Apple, and their acquisition of Next, think about how that transformed Apple and brought Steve Jobs back to the company. If you think about EMC and their acquisition of VMware and how that changed that and now Dell Technologies, if you think about Facebook and Instagram, Qualtrics is to SAP what those M&A moves were to those wonderful companies. And I believe this is the new frontier.
That's pretty
I
bold.
believe that. Totally.
So you're basically betting the company on Qualtrics?
No, the company isn't bet on Qualtrics. The future is bet on what the customer's customer is going to need. I believe this is the elixir to serve the customer. We're financially successful enough that it's not a bet the company, but it is certainly a growth strategy to keep SAP as the fastest growing business software company in the world, which we are right now.
You've grown from a market cap of, what, about 40 billion to 150, depends on the day right now,
Yeah,
market
152
volatile,
today.
100, say that.
Not that I'm watching these things.
But you are.
Of course. You should. You should know what's going on at all times, in real time.
Right, there's some CEOs who would say, I'm not paying attention to that.
They should pay attention. You know why? A lot of people count on you to pay attention, whether it's your employees, which all of our employees now are shareholders of the company, or it's shareholders, or it's just customers. You understand how it works. They want to win, and they want to do business with people that are winning. So winning is fundamentally something that you have to pay close attention to. It is not the in-process measure of success. That's what leaders have to do. But it is an R measure that is a scoreboard. So I would defy to say a baseball manager, a sports manager, at the end of an inning isn't watching the scoreboard. I would certainly hope they are.
So another 4 or 5 years from now, do you want to be at 300 billion?
I believe strongly that since we have already quadrupled the market cap of the company in this 10-year window, I think that there's no question that'll happen probably sooner than later. But the more important thing is, we have quintupled the number of customers we're serving. And that's the metric that I enjoy the most. To have a happy company, you have to have super inspired employees, super loyal customers, and ultimately, how do you maintain them? Innovation.
Sure.
And then this empathy across every employee in the company where their mindset is focused on the outside interests. What's going on with those customers and their customers? How is that ecosystem feeling? That's why we love the startup community so much and have put so much into it and warmly welcome anything that we can do with all the innovators in this room today. Because our company, just like any other company, doesn't have all the answers. It's how we put it together in solutions that really matter.
All right. As you're doing that, can you do me a favor?
I'd do anything.
Can you fix Concur, because it's just so horrible to use?
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting, and I'm very happy if you feel that there's something we can do with Concur to make it better. And that's part of having empathy. If someone says something that you don't necessarily want to hear, that's the time when you should pique your interest and really listen, learn, and do something about it. I do want to say, in fairness to Concur, since you mentioned it, I've heard great things about Concur too. So whatever your issue is, I'd like to take that up with you and solve it, okay?
All right, let's do that backstage.
Thank you, Frederick.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good being with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.